Good morning, welcome to Pink Salt Shed TV, Monday the 22nd of March today. Happy spring! Spring has sprung. It just, well, I don't know, psychological, it feels a bit different out there. It has been sunny though over the last couple of days, so that's very nice for us all. Rightio, this week is a health and wellness week, by which I mean both shows, Monday and Friday, are going to be centred around the subject of health and wellness. Now that's pretty massive, isn't it? It's pretty massive. So we're breaking it down into health and wellness of our self. Something that is hugely important and something I'm very passionate about, and something that I really try to do is make sure I'm looking after myself. Now, there's a lot on social media that covers how we should be very mindful and very aware and very focused on other people's health and well-being. Now, I'm all for that, totally, don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of it is look out for this, look out for that. You need to be mindful. You need to be, watching everything. You need to look at people's anxieties, stress levels, whether they're on the brink, and I don't mean that in a frivolous way or a flippant way, rather. What I mean is none of us are mental health experts. There's a lot of responsibility I think we've got for everyone else. And that's all well and good. But it's difficult to be able to, I think, really look at everybody else's health and well-being if we're not looking after our own. And by that, I mean, we've got our own sleep to consider, we've got our own work life, our own families, our own relationships, our own physical health, our own mental health. And don't get me wrong, I'm not turning this into a mental health something, because I'm not qualified in that, and Claire, who we'll be bringing in on the show in a moment, isn't qualified in it so much. We've all got experiences and we can all speak about our experiences, but unless we're kind of on top of ourselves, where do we start with someone else? We need to be kind to ourselves before we can be kind to others. We need to give our own self empathy before we give empathy to others. We need to realise how we react and respond to life situations before I think we are almost even astute enough to look at how other people respond and react to the situations in their lives. We're responsible for our own decisions, but we're not responsible for anybody else's decisions. It's really tricky, and I think it's a huge ask of us all that we are always so aware of everyone else when what we hear less of is being aware of ourselves. And Claire has worked very hard over the last few years to become more self-aware herself. She has trained hard with yoga and her wellbeing practices. She's undergoing some nutritional therapy. Well, she's taking a degree in nutritional therapy. A lot of what she does is focused all around health and well-being. And what Claire does is she focuses on how we can be more responsible for our own health and well-being. So Claire is perfectly placed to speak to us and to talk to us about how unselfish it is to actually look after ourselves, and how sometimes we need to say no because we need to look after ourselves. It's very easy to just say yes to everything, but actually the pressures you can put on yourself are quite immense. So we'll bring Claire in now to chat to us. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning.
Good morning. I don't know
Can
why
you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you well. Can you hear me?
Good.
Yeah,
Yes,
perfect.
perfectly.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope all of that made sense, because I'm very aware, having gone through my own sort of things and niggles and this and that, to be more self-aware and kinder to myself, that first of all, so we can be good for everyone else, or good or better or more aware of others, we need to first focus on ourselves. Tell us a little bit about you and how you started to become more self-aware, because your job before all of this was massive and really different from what you do now. What is it that changed, and how did you get to be sort of an expert in what you do?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I would say it's very much an ongoing journey. As you've kind of alluded to, I'm in the middle of doing quite a major qualification, in fact, in naturopathic nutritional therapy, which
Mm.
we can talk about a little bit more. But like
Yeah.
my it's years ago now, really, that I feel like this started for me, where slowly, through a series of events that took place in my life, I was sort of brought round to the idea that, in fact, I really needed to radically change a few things, but it didn't happen overnight, like
No.
it really, for me, it's been since my early 20s, and that's like 20 odd years ago now. So but I had a very big job, as you said. I'm a solicitor by profession. I worked in the city in London for one of the law firms there, and it was full on, and I loved it. I mean, it was absolutely what I wanted to do with my life at that time, no doubt about it. But I then sort of decided that London was not where I eventually wanted to end up, and I got a really great opportunity to move overseas to go to Australia and practice law there, and I requalified and and settled down there. But then, of course, the financial crisis came along, and I was made redundant, and I had to have a big rethink about things, and also just go with the options that were available to me at that time. So in doing that, I had this opportunity, if you like, to really reassess things. And I see a lot of parallels with people at the moment as well, because of what's going on in the world, having this kind of
Absolutely.
opportunity where it's not, obviously it's not something that we would want to happen, but I'm very much a believer in, out of these kind of challenges and adversities come opportunities as
I
well.
agree. One door
Um,
closes, another door opens.
absolutely, yeah. So, and it takes, it's not like you get there in 5 minutes, but it is something that, if you can have that mindset about it, really, I found it to be very helpful. So, I was lucky in that I got back to the UK after being in Australia, totally unexpected, and I was able to regroup a little bit, and then decide what to do from there. And I ended up in China, going to teach English for a year, because my undergrad was an English degree. So
My
I
God.
mean, and then I I stayed in China for 10 years. It wasn't in the plan,
No.
but I just got better and better job opportunities while I
Yeah.
was there, and eventually I ended up working in a management position for the British Council, which has quite a big presence in China, and in a management team in the commercial part of
So
their
it was a
business.
very
And
sorry, it was a very corporate environment.
it was a very corporate
Yeah.
environment still. I had sort of crossed the barrier into education, but then ended up moving sort of more back into the corporate aspects of managing
Yeah.
an education business, rather than, or helping to manage, I should say. I certainly wasn't
Yes.
doing it by myself. Very large organization with a massive diversity of people. It was fabulous, really. So, you know, it really taught me this lesson, though, that whatever you plan, like the best laid plans, there will be things that come along. And along the course of that as well, sort of as a parallel sort of narrative to my career,
Yeah.
was my own personal health journey, really.
Yes.
Funnily enough, once I'd left the corporate environment in London and in Australia, it was almost like, I don't know whether I hit a kind of a wall or something, but or if it was an age, it was a progressive thing. But I
Yeah.
started to notice that, in terms of my physical well-being, there were a lot of issues coming up, and there were a lot of things that I had to address in terms of lifestyle. And in fact, the timeline crossing the way it did enabled me to do that, because in my previous, like, career, in my jobs, I didn't have that time, to
Okay. Yeah.
look after myself in the same way that I've been able to since, even though I'm still an incredibly busy person.
You
um
are.
and I do a lot of things, notwithstanding. So yeah, I don't know. Does that that's kind of a bit about my personal history. So I decided to leave China eventually because I'd been there for a decade, and I wanted to come back to the UK to do this degree, because ultimately, you know, naturopathic nutrition is what has really, that and yoga together have really, really been what have put my health back into my hands. And when I talk about health, I don't just mean like my physical health even. I mean my whole health,
Yes.
in terms of my mental and emotional well-being as well. Because for me, what I came to realize was that there's actually, no separation between those two things. Or
Absolutely.
three things. I felt like there was for a very long time, and then through the process of my own experience and coming to understand that more, and exploring it and finding out what worked for me in terms of looking after myself, I realized that there really isn't. They sort of go together.
They
It's
do,
just the
and
way it is.
I think your experiences of having travelled a lot and being in the legal world, whether in this country, in another country, having to retrain, living somewhere else, going over to China and living there for so long, actually. I mean, that wasn't the plan, but it ended up being what you did. So you've had many changes along the way to get your head round. Friendships, relationships, educations, because you've put yourself through more education. Um, but have you always had in your mind that this is what you wanted to, the path you wanted to go down?
Um, well, I've always been interested in it, but I never
Mm-hmm.
really realized it was going to become something that I ended up doing
Yeah.
as what I do, and helping and supporting other people, hopefully.
Yes.
That's the idea in
Oh
that.
yeah.
But I just discovered this passion for it, and I suddenly realized how absolutely central it was to me and my life. And funnily enough, when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and as much as I wanted to be a lawyer, and it was kind of a choice that I made between those two things. In all honesty, seriously, and when it was time to choose which A levels to do, I was like, am I going to go for the arts, or I'm going to go for the
Yeah.
sciences? So I made that choice, and I don't regret it at all, because
No,
everything that I've done has built upon that, and got me
it
to
has,
this
and it's
point.
yes, it's led you to where you are now. So when you started doing your yoga practices, was that something you just did as a hobby outside of work?
Yeah. So I recognized I was in a high stress environment, right?
Yes.
And I needed something to balance that. And I think most people have a sense of that in their lives. It's not like people don't know when that's the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was in Australia at the time, and I'd sort of done a bit of yoga in London before, but not really anything serious. And I happened to be living around the corner from in Paddington in Sydney, from this beautiful old church, and there's a big board outside, chalkboard. Someone had written on it, yoga classes every morning at 7. And I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
walked past it on my way to the office. So,
Yeah, kind of just
I
no
started
excuse.
going, and it just clicked. Like, the teacher she made it fun, it was
Mm-hmm.
accessible, she explained it well, she really understood it herself, and what she had a personal practice,
Yes.
and it she was able to translate that and get it across as to how it was for her and what it did for her, and that really clicked with me, and I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. And it's not supposed to be a punishment, really, any of this stuff. And if it feels like a punishment, then it's probably telling you that you should try something else. There are
Yes.
so many different modalities to explore, that if
Mm-hmm.
something doesn't work for you, just because the latest health guru says this is the thing we all need to do, doesn't necessarily mean that it works for you as
Exactly.
an
Doesn't
individual,
mean
or me as an
everyone's.
individual.
Yeah. We
We're
don't
all
all enjoy the
different.
same things. Yeah, we don't. So
Yeah.
when you
So
trained, sorry, carry on.
no, so I was just going to add. So that was in 2006 or 7, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And ever since then, I've been practicing. And I went off, and wherever I've gone in the world, I've found yoga.
Yeah.
There is yoga everywhere. And I was
Yes.
very lucky in Shanghai to have a teacher who, Raj, who's still got his studios there. who trains teachers as well. And initially when I did it, I wasn't doing it to teach other people. I was doing it for self-development. I really wanted to learn and understand more about it because it so strongly clicked with me.
Yes.
So I went off to India with him, and he took a group of us over there. Every year he would take a group of people, and he trained us, just a yoga teacher training. But he trained in the Sivananda tradition, which is very famous, which is they have ashrams all over the world. So that was my initial sort of lineage of yoga, if you like.
So what year was that in? So the timeline, we're looking at 2000 and...
Oh, that was 2016. So I've been teaching for 5 years now. Right, so having said, I'm not really doing this to teach.
Well, no, but the thing is, though, I mean, 2006, it was a very large part of your life, and was up until. And what I like about it is the fact that you were really personally interested in it, and you personally felt the benefits of it. To then start doing the teaching was because it became something that you knew would be great for other people to do as well, and that coincided with when you came back to the UK. Is that right? Ish.
Actually before then. So I taught in Shanghai part-time for 2 years. There's a really strong yoga community there as well, and a health and well-being community as well, and that was kind of how I got into. I mean, it's a very, China obviously is a very ancient country, with a very, very long history, and has its own medicine system, traditional Chinese medicine, which they use alongside Western style medicine, and I became very interested in that as well. And energetics, the energetics of medicine, of food, of yoga, this idea that we're not just our physical selves, there's more than that. And we're not just individuals in our own little bubbles, we are connected to everything around us. So, your environment, the macro environment around you are part of that. And you are also your own little microcosm as well. So everything, all works together. I found that fascinating as well.
See, I find that fascinating. And there's cultures that have a stronger sense of that than our own, and I think a lot of people would think when our culture here in the UK, or our typical culture here in the UK starts to go in that direction, it's all a little bit sort of hippie, it's all a little bit, bare feet in the grass type of thing. But actually, I think other cultures have really started to progress, where we're now following. And I think it's very important to learn from people that have been doing it for centuries, that actually it's a really good pathway to follow. Because like you say, I firmly believe that we all have a part to play on this earth, whether it's for us and our connection with earth, or whether it's for us and our connection with other people as well. So you started down the yoga route. What did you bring in to sort of complement that? You've gone down sort of the nutritional side of things, and other well-being aspects. What other wellness do you sort of bring in to complete that picture?
Yeah, so I mean, I sort of focus. I like to keep things as simple as possible because life's complicated, right?
It is, yes. Yeah.
So I focused mainly, which is an Ayurvedic concept actually, which is the sister science to yoga, the Indian medicine system, Ayurveda, and food, sleep, and emotional well-being, or relationships, like love, they call it, but it's beyond romantic relationships. It's really your heart connection with things, and I didn't do it overnight. It started with the yoga practice, and the thing about yoga that I think is perhaps not too well understood is that yoga is not just the physical movement. It's not just the asana practice. It has a whole philosophy and school of thought that underpins it. And the asana practice, the postures that you do in a class, are simply one aspect of it. You can bring all of the principles onto the mat into that practice, but it's also something that you do outside of the class itself. Yes, and it's also a personal practice. It's a mindset, in fact. And it brings principles in. So one of these principles is self-inquiry and knowing yourself, getting to know yourself. Before you do
Yes.
anything,
Yeah.
you have to understand where you're at
Absolutely.
without judging it as well, without saying to yourself, well, this is terrible or this is great, or, you know, anywhere in between. Just being like observing what is going on here, and getting a little bit of a taking a step back, and you maybe need a teacher to do that. And you know, traditionally yoga has been taught one-on-one rather than in a group setting.
Yes.
So, and that's why, because everyone's different and everyone has different needs from yoga, like anything else. But what I did was, I really focused on my food, because that was a massive issue for me. I found out that I had certain medical issues. And that's where the nutrition has come in as well. I mix things up completely. You know,
Yeah.
I bring in the Western as well as the Eastern. It's if something
Well,
helps and
that's
works,
yeah. Well, that's part
then, you
our
know,
cultural our cultures
yeah.
are changing in that we're fusing. You know, food fusion. Well, actually, there's a lot of fusion between cultures now, and I think that's important because we don't all follow the traditional cultural route. A lot of things are brought into our way of life now.
And it's the principles. I think I'm a big one for understanding why you're doing something, not just doing it because someone tells you to do it,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
and really understanding if it works for you, and knowing that, you know, and not just following fads and kind of the latest, you
I
know,
agree.
idea.
Fads really wind me up because, you know, when I was last week, I was talking about diets. You know, diet doesn't necessarily, you know, there are two meanings of diet. Diet is, you know, there's the lifestyle kind of way that you adopt in a habitual way, and there's the diet that you adopt in a fad way. And I think it's used too widely, the word diet, when it comes to fads. And you know, it's an absolute money spinner for many organisations, let's say, and we completely tune into it. Though, honestly,
Well,
I'm thinking many of us
it
need it.
simplifies things, doesn't it? I mean, it would be nice if there were just one easy solution. If some, yeah, do, you know, take this pill or just change this little thing and everything will fix itself. But
Yeah,
my experience is that that's not the case. It's something that you do on a daily basis to look after yourself. Small, little incremental changes, usually that take quite a while, but then become natural and part of your life.
yes,
And you know, one day you look up 5 years later and you're like, oh, look at all of this, you know, this is where I'm
yeah,
at now. And
yeah,
it's part of the journey of life. You know, we're always trying to get somewhere. We've always got this end goal in mind without
yeah.
really, I think, a lot of the time enjoying the process, or being even present in the process as it's
Absolutely.
happening.
We want Amazon to deliver the next day. You know, we want things to happen now, 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 and that's because of the fast-paced life that we've put upon ourselves. You
Yeah,
know, so much of the
it
stresses and strain is absolutely self-made, because the
but to be
pressure to
fair, it
do
doesn't
better, to be quicker, you know, to just it
it
doesn't
doesn't
give us
feel
time to
like it's
breathe.
self-made sometimes. That's the
No.
issue, I think, for a lot of people. And that's where taking that step back, and this is where yoga can give you the pause. And I think that's what it did for me. It gave me the space and the pause. Even though it's only an hour, I was just
Yeah.
with myself in the class doing yoga. And that gives you that time and space to just go, oh, let's just stop a minute, you
Yeah.
know. And then later on, I discovered another kind of style of yoga called yin yoga, which I absolutely love. It's a static form of yoga. I'm sure some people are familiar with it, but it's based around Chinese medicine. And it's very meditative, very still. You have to just sit there and relax. And in today's world, that's difficult for a lot of people. You
Yes.
know, that's a challenge, not the go, 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 but you just try sitting still for 5 minutes with your thoughts and
I think
see how that feels, you
I
know?
think a
And
lot of
that, yeah.
so I think a lot of people don't they don't do it, which means they don't understand it, and it's no disrespect to anyone. They don't get it, so they don't do it
Or
because they
like, why
don't know
would you
what
want to?
benefits. Well, yeah, and what are the
Yeah.
benefits of being still when I need to do this, this, and this? It's not about. It's not about that. I mean, somebody said to me once that there was a meditation teacher, a master, you know, who decided that because he had such little time, he would meditate for twice as long on this particular day. And because of that, he became far more efficient with time and how he spent time doing the other things he had to do, because the clarity and the focus was what he'd given himself time to do. So then he was far more effective in active life.
Sure, that's you know, and I that's a Zen a Zen story. It's a well known like apocryphal tale about meditation.
I'm not too wrong.
Might be right. True. It's no, it's absolutely true. But it's not. It's also that through that process, you come to realize what's actually important.
Yes.
Do you really need to be doing everything that you're doing, or are you busy because we need to be busy? You know, and even that, this is where I mean, like, I think some people don't even realize that is because it feels so urgent. It feels so beyond control. It's like, I have to do these things because this is what everybody else is doing, and that's how life is, or I can't see how to change it. And if I do, something's going to go horribly wrong. There's a lot of fear of the unknown that underpins it as well, I think. And this kind of emotional processing for me is something that was supported through the holistic health practices that I brought into my life, and changing things, you know, and it hasn't always been easy. Honestly, I'm not trying to make out that it's necessarily an easy thing to do, but I think I felt very trapped, certainly.
Yeah.
And then I came to realize that I wasn't, and that I had options, and that was very freeing and made a huge difference to the quality of my life.
I think a lot of people in the routines that we adopt, you know, we have our routines. The alarm goes off, you get up, you have breakfast or you don't, you shower, you don't, you go out the front door, you do your job's work, or you have children, families. There's kind of there's the set day, there's the set things you do, and every so often we put that into our diary, or we add this into our diary, and we're very routine like, and all of those routines always seem to be doing something. You know, I think a lot of people, they find that their time for them is going to the gym, or their time for them is chatting with this person, their time for them is still always doing something. You know, reading a book, having a bath, listening to something whilst you're in the car. Okay, you're still driving, but there's an element of, you've got a captive audience with the sounds that are coming out of the speakers. There are things that we just don't think about doing and spending a bit longer doing. And when it comes to meditation, you know, I was like, oh, meditation, yeah, I haven't got an hour spare to sit down and think of nothing. And it's like, but that's not what it is, because your mind can never think of nothing anyway. You can quieten your mind, and, you know, if you bring a thought in, you thank it, and then you kind of dispel it because you're concentrating on something else. And meditation can be guided as well. You're not just sitting there all totally silent thinking about all the things you could be doing. And it doesn't have to last an hour. You know, 5 minutes. Give yourself 5 minutes. You know, sit down.
Or two, or one. Or two, start somewhere. You know, like, and also meditation doesn't even have to be sitting still quietly. You can do moving meditation. Running can be a meditation. If you your exercise, whatever you do, doing the dishes, chopping vegetables can be a meditation. Meditation is simply focusing the direction of your thoughts, whatever school you come to. Like, and again, this is where I'm like, don't get too caught up. My take is, don't get too caught up in the kind of like, well, which school you know, am I following exactly what this particular person said is how it should be done? Just try it. You know, just try to do something mindfully for a minute and see what happens, or, you know, go off and find a course if you want to, whatever, but explore it. But I think we put ourselves off sometimes by getting too complicated about it. I think that's what it comes down to. And
a lot of us have the attitude of, like, I can't do that. Well, you've not you've failed at the first hurdle, but you've put an obstacle there. It's like when a lot of us say, at the beginning of the day, oh, I'm going to, I should go for a run today. I should go for a run today. And then the end of the day comes, you haven't gone for that run. But because you use the word should, you have therefore now disappointed yourself. You feel that you failed because you've put the word, I should have done that. I should have done that. If you'd have started the day thinking, well, if I've got a bit of time, I'll go for a run. And then at the end of the day, if you haven't been for that run, well, it's no great shakes because, well, clearly you didn't have time to go for that run then. But you're not giving yourself that disappointed feeling of, oh, I should have. And feeling that you've failed at something that you've given yourself to do that day. It's like, I mean, I write lists. Honestly, lists coming out of my ears on bits of paper on a proper, really lovely planner that I've got. And if I don't cross off the things on my list, part of me is just like, oh, for God's sake. The other part of me puts an arrow and points to the next day because it goes on my list of things for the next day.
I'm really exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, I used to be really hung up on what I didn't achieve. And now I'm just thankful for the things I do achieve, because some of the things there's a tall order, other things are really small little things that I should be able to do at the drop of a hat. But you know what? It's just like, don't sweat it. It doesn't mean I'm lazy, although my husband might have something else to say about that with the kids. But it just means that I'm prioritising what is giving me the best experience for what I'm doing, and yes, I get all of the important things done. I think that's what's important to say. I might focus on the things that are more joyful or pleasurable, but at the end of the day, I do what I need to do to not give myself the stresses of having not done it. So I'm more mindful, I suppose, about how my day progresses and what I get done during the day. I suppose.
Well, and mindful about how you're talking to yourself.
Yes, like, that's very
true.
The
inner critic is a thing that we all have. And it's recognizing when that voice is getting a little bit out of control. Mm-hmm. And I think it comes back to what we were talking about before, where it's like we're busy. We live in a busy world, mm-hmm. where there's lots to do. There's too much to do. But for some reason, we all run around thinking that we should be able to do it all.
Yeah, we do.
I don't and where did that idea really come from? Yes. I mean, that's a whole other program.
It is. You know what? There's so much. There is so much that we could. There's so much we could do. We could do many of these and still not ever get to the bottom of it. One thing I will say before we kind of move on, I suppose, to different areas of health and well-being for ourselves, is that one thing I found really quite useful is I downloaded an app. And in that app, there were guided meditations, and I would find that I would link my phone to my car. And if I had a journey of, let's say, 20 minutes, half an hour, 40 minutes, I would stick one of these things on because I would listen to this guided, well, I don't want to call it meditation, but it is in a way. You can still drive, you can still function. I mean, often you drive from A to B wondering how on earth you got to B because you don't remember anything. This was, I would listen, and my point is I would listen to stuff that was being talked at me about how to be more positive about yourself, about how I could be more positive about myself. And one thing I found really, really important was that I stopped looking to other people for validation. So I stopped not looking, not waiting for somebody to say something. I stopped doing things that would mean that I only get that feeling of reward if somebody was to say something. And I stopped blaming others for my own feeling of lack of self-worth. And through listening to these things in the car, I learned that actually it was fine if I decided if I did want to do that, if I didn't want to do that. And it was fine for me to hear that actually I'm okay, I'm in control. I can make decisions for myself and I am responsible for myself. That was one really big thing that I learned, is that I am only responsible for myself, and not to feel that others had a responsibility for making me happy. It was me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the, you know, that issue of control is a big thing for a lot of people. And I see that it's like the most frustration comes from trying to control things that are just not within personal control, like other people, for example. They're going to
Yep.
do what they're going to do. And of course, we should be nice to each other. It's not like a license to like go out and just do whatever the hell you want to do, you know,
No.
and behave however you want to behave. Quite the opposite, in fact. It's then, well, recognizing that other people are under a great deal of pressure as well, and how
Mm-hmm.
they behave isn't necessarily to do with you, actually.
Yes.
And to stop, like you said, always referring to how other people view you and treat you as a measure of your own self-worth. It's
Yes.
really damaging in some instances
Yeah.
to do that, and can lead to all sorts of problems and issues. Um, and again, I mean, you know, talking about, you know, looking after yourself, and part of that is nurturing yourself emotionally and building a sense
Hugely.
of self-esteem and
Yes.
self-worth.
Yep.
And you know, for me personally, that a great deal of that has come through my yoga practice, even though
Mm-hmm.
that might sound like, what, how does that work, you know? It's
No, but
like
you've spent time with
you
yourself.
you spend time with yourself, and you develop emotionally as well. And it's not something that is even necessarily something that you can put into words a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time, because it's an emotional thing. It kind of bypasses that rational part of our brain. But over time, that sense of self, that sense of well-being, gradually shifts and changes, you
It
know,
does.
and becomes founded in something else as well. That's
Yes.
really important,
I
you
agree. I
know.
can't. One thing, because I've done quite a lot of working on myself. Let's, if you put it like that. I can't remember when the time was that I shifted from being more dependent on others for my own emotional well-being, and when I then became more aware of the fact that I was in control of it. But what I really did feel was physical shifts. I could acknowledge, I can't remember when, but I can absolutely acknowledge and go, yeah, from where I was then to where I am now, I've done amazingly well. So there are times along the way where you can feel different, and through doing bits and bobs, this and that, not necessarily being totally conscious with what you're doing, but you can feel the differences from even maybe giving yourself time to think. I don't think many of us give ourselves time to think emotionally about things. We're too busy to sit and think and feel the emotions that we should, or that would be good or beneficial for us to go through, to realize them, to acknowledge them, and then move on through them and come out the other side.
Yeah, I agree. And there's a disconnect. People are disconnected from themselves. I
Yeah.
find I was disconnected from myself, and it's a natural result of the way that we live. We're constantly, if you want to put it into kind of biochemical terms, we're constantly in fight and flight, in stress mode, running
Yes.
around. We never get the chance to give, we never give our nervous systems the chance to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
And the vagus nerve, which connects the head, the heart, and the gut, is sending all these messages all the time of, you're in stress, you're in fight and flight, you need to, you know, you need to, your body is needs to react to situations like that, even when there's no actual threat. You know, that system that we have within us
Mm-hmm.
is designed for all sorts of stress. It doesn't distinguish between types of stress. So
Yes.
if it's a life threatening or situation or not, and then over time that really impacts your health,
Mm-hmm.
your hormones, your endocrine system, your immune system,
Yeah.
the ability of the body just to be resilient gets worn away. All the
Mm-hmm.
systems are constantly under pressure and coping
Yes. Yeah.
with overload, and that's not the level we are designed to operate at.
Mm-hmm.
So on a very physical level, it has that effect, as well as the emotional side of it, you know.
So, see what I think. where we're moving conversationally, I think, is where we've got the different aspects of how we can learn to be more aware of ourselves in what we're doing. I'm thinking sleep, I'm thinking nutritionally, the Ayurvedic almost sort of situation, which I know is sort of, it's one of the traditional Chinese medicines. I know that you adopt another one as
Indian.
well.
It's the Indian one. Yeah.
The Indian one. Can you talk to us a little bit about those? Because as far as we go as a person, our head is connected to our heart, connected to our gut, and there's the systems that we need to balance, or that would be very beneficial for us to balance. So the Chinese medicines, talk to us a little bit about that. I'm conscious I'm taking up your time, but we need to get to a point where we can then sort of go to Friday with this sort of roundabout idea with maybe what we're talking on Friday. But tell us more about the kind of things you adopt in your practices with people.
So I take a holistic approach, and what that actually means is that I find something to deal with the whole self, and that's not any one thing, by the way. Like I was saying before, there's no one thing that's going to fix everything magically and then you're all good. For me, it's been looking after the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, if you like spirit with a small s, rather than getting into sort of religious connotations or anything like that. I'm not, I'm not religious myself, and it's great if people have that in their lives, but it's not something that I ever found that was useful to me, or that came into my life for whatever reason. But I do feel like I am in tune with my emotional and spiritual self, and I think human beings all have that aspect to them. And the thing about ancient wisdom traditions like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine is that there's a lot of commonality, and they're not the only ones by far. There are many, like Japan has its own traditional medicine system as well. Tibetan medicine is another system again. It's fascinating, and these are all millennia old, and there are treatises written on them in their own their own traditions, their own languages. They're new to the West, but they are far from new, and there's a lot of wisdom there because they see the person as a whole. And what that means is, I think I've frozen. Oh, there we go.
You're moving again.
So what, I'll try not to move too much. It doesn't like, my camera doesn't like that. What that means is that you're looking at, a bit like what I said before, you're looking at yourself not just as the physical body, and not even just the physical brain or the mind, but as energy, connected to whatever is going on around you as well. So you are within the system of the universe, if you like. You're part of the cosmos. You're connected to it. We're all made of the same materials, the same elements, and combined and put together in different ways and forms. And even the basic laws of physics connect us all. We're all subject to those in similar ways, and the moon has an effect on the planet and has an effect on us. And so it's that kind of broad view of what we actually are as beings, which underpins these ways of thinking about things. So when you actually look at Ayurvedic medicine and you look at Chinese medicine, if you have a problem, for a start, they both say it starts in the mind. And I buy that. It's because if you're under stress all the time and panicking, what I was saying about, biochemically, what stress does to your system, whether it's external stress, like something physical, or whether it's something mental stress, the same reaction in your body over time, your body's ability to deal with illness and to cope and to bounce back and be resilient gets impaired. So when Chinese medicine and Ayurveda says it starts in the mind, I correlate it to that. It's to do with your thinking, your way of living. And that's not to say that it's like that's not a blame thing either. It's not
No,
like,
that's
oh, you know,
just
it's your own fault or anything. Far
yeah,
from it.
yeah.
I don't mean that at all. I just mean as a way of understanding how we become unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's very helpful, I find. And then, you know, this idea then tracked through that you treat the whole person. So you don't just treat the physical symptom, you look for root
Yes.
causes of
Yeah.
things. And that's kind of what I try and do with my yoga clients, even is I drill down to what are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on for you in your life? And the same is true with naturopathic nutrition. When we are working with somebody, we take an entire case history. So we go
Yeah.
right back to childhood and look at all the major events in the life, as well
Mm-hmm.
as their lifestyle and what people are eating. And then think about how that needs to be adjusted to optimize health. And it's quite similar, in fact, to what an Ayurvedic doctor or a Chinese medicine doctor might do for you, you know, in terms of in Chinese medicine, like each organ system has an emotion associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
And the heart and the mind and the body are not separate, they all influence each other. And the same in
Yes.
Ayurveda, like constitutionally, um, you're your physical self, but the body has 5 layers, and the
Mm-hmm.
physical self is like the innermost one, and then each one gets more and more subtle. And you have to address all of the issues that are going on. So an Ayurvedic doctor, for example, they might prescribe you herbs. They might say you need to eat certain things and adjust your diet. In fact, they almost certainly will, because food
Yeah.
is a huge part of Ayurvedic medicine.
Yes.
But they will also say meditate. That will be part of your prescription.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it fascinating that we're coming around to this idea here. You know, NHS doctors now can actually prescribe mindfulness,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
a kind of, it's a secularized Buddhist practice, in
Mm-hmm.
fact. I mean, that's where it comes from in its roots. So, you know, we're getting there, and it's being acknowledged that actually
Thousands
these
of years
things
later.
really do
I mean,
make
I
a
don't know why I'm laughing,
difference.
but yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, you know what, it's amazing. Yeah, I think it's amazing and it's
I
brilliant.
think
But yeah, it is
when
a bit funny as well.
yeah, well, it's just like, come on, we're only just catching on. But I think it's interesting how we all can react to it differently. How some people can be quite welcoming to these new ways. I mean, they're not new ways, but you know, for many of us, they're new ways. And how you can get people that can be quite dismissive of it as well. But I think it's something that shouldn't be overlooked because it has been so successful and has been so important for many cultures that now we're all opening ourselves up to different cultures and adopting many different ways from different cultures. This is, I think, a huge one for us for all to try, because it's a case of it so we've got to sort ourselves out. And that's why, I mean, I go slightly back to the beginning of the show. I get irritated when everybody is asked to look after everybody else's mindset. And it's like, yeah, great, I'd love to be able to do that, but I can't even do it for myself.
And if we if we were all able to perhaps look after our own a bit better, it would make the world of difference to how we interact with each other as well.
Yes, yeah,
You know?
absolutely. I think it would,
Yeah.
and it's all there for us to, like you say, it's not something that we can do overnight. We've just got to keep doing it, practicing it, whether you're adopting new things in your life to practice or whether you're just going about your day a bit more mindfully. It's just small changes can make the biggest positive differences. I think to how we interact with others, but how we are with ourselves as well. And I think this has been a very good introduction actually to Friday's show, with talking about maybe more specifics. What specifics do you think we should drill down into, really?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to get very specific on a format like, and also
Mm-hmm.
given the nature of it, like because everybody is is so different. It's hard
Yeah.
to specifically answer questions, but if people have like in general questions about things, then I'm quite happy to sort of give my thoughts in a sort of very informal way about stuff.
Yeah.
What I would say as well is that we can talk more about some of the nutritional aspects, like what is actually naturopathic nutrition, because I
Yes.
think
Good question.
maybe that's not so well known,
Yeah.
and just talk about, you know, maybe whatever people really want to ask questions about.
It's broad,
I'm
isn't it?
happy to say
It's
it's
a
very
really big
broad,
thing. Yeah.
but also maybe what, you know, my approach with people coming new to yoga, or I, you know, tips for that.
No,
I'm really happy
I
to talk about anything, but I just with the caveat that I can't be giving detailed individual advice to people, really.
absolutely. People can take from you what they feel is best for themselves. And I would like to talk to you certainly more about, you know, about the specifics of what we can focus on, of our focuses, but also about what you do. And what you do with your clients, from, you know, the moment you get a new client, about how you talk with them, the kind of questions you ask, because of course we don't know what questions to ask ourselves. We don't quite know if there's, you know, we're doing it because there's a problem, or if we're doing it because it's just something we want to experience that we feel will be beneficial to ourselves and others. But if you can tell us the process that you go through with your yoga classes, and what you're going to be doing with your naturopathic qualifications as well, I think that would give us a really good round idea of how you treat a person as their self, so we're given the best foundations to carry on that practice outside of your classes, and and adopt and habitualize the things that we do, to just be more aware of our own needs. I think that's where we should go. Do you?
Sounds good. Okay.
Claire,
We'll
thank
try.
you so.
We can but try. Yeah.
We can but try. Thank you so much for today, Claire. I'll give you a call in a minute. Now, do stay with us, and I'll chat to you afterwards, or go and do your own thing, and I'll call you in a bit. But thanks so much for today. It's been really great to listen to what you've got to say about how we can start to make those changes, because you've done it as well, actually, and you come from a voice of experience. You haven't just plucked this out of the air to start to want to do it. And basically I just want to, you know, I want Friday because I want to pick your brain more, I think.
Okay.
I'm treating it as personal therapy, but yeah, I want to pick your brain more. So thank you for that, and we'll see you officially back here on Friday.
Thanks for having me, Kate. It's been
Thanks,
great.
Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you Friday.
Oh, sorry, I cut you off slightly there. So today has been an introduction to our awareness, my awareness, Claire's awareness, but everybody's awareness of how we need to be a bit more, not selfless, not selfish, not self-indulgent, but just more aware of ourselves. It is a huge subject, and to speak to Claire generally about things has been great, but to do anything more specifically is tricky, because we need more specifics of different cases or different situations to be able to talk about more specifically. If you've got anything that you want to ask Claire or myself, then do email me, kate@pinksaltshed.com. What I will do after this, on the YouTube link, I will put down Claire's contact details as well, so you can have a clear path into Claire and maybe just chat with her directly. Absolutely fine by me. Now, the way I'm approaching this is, I've got a history as a holistic therapist, not mental therapist, but I was a holistic massage therapist, and found that touch and the connection between people and can be a real release, and it can be really beneficial for people to want to just feel that moment of calm, and you know, going and having a massage is an amazing thing. I'm actually qualified as a meditation teacher as well, so I speak about this with a little bit of knowledge, in that I've opened myself up to the thoughts and the feelings, well, the thoughts of knowing this kind of thing that Claire's doing can really make a difference, but also feeling that this kind of path that people take to be more self-aware actually really does have a difference. Sometimes it can be a life experience. It can be something that happens that means that you just need to move those a little electrical signals a little bit, and they will almost join and make that pathway to a bit more clarity or a bit more balance. But sometimes we just need to see what it's like and put ourselves out there to be receptive to these things that we can do for ourselves. And like I say, it's not selfish. You know, you can start saying no to people. It's not selfish, because it's all about how it makes you feel. If you're stressed because you say yes too much, then you're going to be relaying all of that stress onto other people. You'll be irritable, and that's not a great feeling to have. So how we treat ourselves can have a direct impact on how other people feel around us, and how we how we can function, and how we can look after other people as well. It starts with ourselves, basically. Didn't have to say it in so many words, did I? So join us again on Friday. Friday's show will be at 11 o'clock, unless there's any other particular update. So join us then, get your cup of tea and come and sit with us. Please do subscribe to my channel, Pink Salt Shed TV, and hit the alarm bell for notifications, and have a great week. Think about things that you might want us to answer, actually, specifics on Friday. So use my email address, and of course the details that I'll provide you with at the end of the YouTube thingy in the comments. All right, but until then, have a great week. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you.